This is just a little bit of context for some of you who may not be that aware of what ACM does and stands for. So first of all, ACM is an international organization, and many people, in fact, believe it is an American organization, although it is a worldwide organization, and it expands in a very old-fashioned way to Association for Computing Machinery, which doesn't mean much in today's day and age. Maybe like IBM, they should just throw away the expansion and call it ACM and be done with it. But the tagline of ACM is this: advancing computing as a science and profession, which I think conveys the goal very succinctly. In fact, it is the world's largest society for computing on an educational and scientific basis. Most people would probably have heard of it in the context of the Turing Award, which is considered the highest honor in computing, so-called Nobel Prize in computing. Most people who are academic computer scientists would have encountered ACM journals and conferences, which are among the oldest and most prestigious in many areas. ACM maintains a digital library of all the material which is presented through these forums, and also links to material in other publications. ACM and IEEE have also played an important role in computer science education. For many decades now, they have been the defining body coming out with what constitutes a modern computer science curriculum. Implicitly or explicitly, all institutions, almost all institutions throughout the world, certainly many in India, follow this. Many IIT curricula, and therefore derived from that, many engineering institutions follow this. The most recent revision was in 2013, and one of the things that is going on is to try and adapt to the new revisions which ACM and IEEE have proposed. It's an interesting fact. As I said, it's a US-centric organization. 50% of the members of 100,000 members, which basically are made up of two categories, I should add. There are the so-called professional members, which are people who are either working in the industry or academics, and then there are student members. So all told, there are about 100,000. About half of them are in the US, and if you leave the US, the next biggest chunk is in India. Okay, there are 10% in India, and then everything else adds up to the remaining 40%. So given this, it was probably a natural step at some point for ACM to assert its worldwide nature by forming separate councils, as they call them, to guide ACM activities in different regions where they have a large presence and which may have different concerns also, which are local. So ACM India was started around 7 years ago, and the goal is to basically the last line, which is to become the voice of the Indian computing community. And this involves engaging with all aspects of computing in India. So certainly with academia, and that's why we are here, okay, at the intersection of education and research. Also with industry, and also I think it is important that collectively we address the government and be, in some sense, the policy-making arm of the computing community. Somebody has to represent this thing in a common way, and I think this is one of the goals that ACM India has set for itself. So just to compartmentalize, because it's easier to present, so ACM India has a research board which is focused on academic advancement. So a few years ago, we started the Indian version of the doctoral dissertation award, which ACM awards internationally. So every year, and just last week, we awarded this in Calcutta at the meeting. And so this is an annual award organized by the research board. We have been getting visible conferences in many major areas to India. Some of them are ACM conferences, others need not be, like VLDB was held last year, which is not an ACM conference. But the idea is to expose Indian academia to the best conferences in the areas, because conferences in computer science are definitely the leading edge of academic research. With another organization called IARCS, ACM and IARCS jointly fund students in particular to attend and present their work at international conferences. And at the moment, about 50 such students are supported every year. And as we are here today, we have, in partnership with Microsoft and Microsoft Research in particular, been organizing these academic research summits, which bring together all of us to sit together and talk to each other about what we do and what we would like to do. Education, which is the other side of academia, is also an important focus for ACM India. There is, of course, a lot of concern across the country about the quality of undergraduate education. And ACM India is trying to address this both through faculty development programs and through spreading awareness and facilitating the adoption of the updated ACM curricula in Indian universities. An interesting new initiative which started very recently but has really taken off is something called CS Pathshala, which is an attempt to teach computer science in schools at a more meaningful way, in a more meaningful way than it's being done now. I'll say a little bit more about this at the end. From the coming summer, we are starting some ACM summer schools, where we hope to expose undergraduates who are towards the second half of their curriculum, to expose them to interesting ideas and hope that a few of them at least will be taking to research and feeding the institutions where we are so desperately looking for good PhD students. And at a completely different level, it has been often claimed that many Indian computer science graduates are functionally unemployable. And in order to measure this and test it and maybe make this information useful, we are designing a programming aptitude test, which will be like a kind of a very low-level exit qualification, which maybe we are hoping industry can make use of in the future, and also hopefully to give us something to measure up to in terms of where we want our curriculum to improve. So ACM has always been very committed to diversity and has a strong movement called ACMW, celebrating women in computing. We have an event this evening along with the dinner organized through ACMW, so you'll find out a little bit more about that. But just to say a few words, so ACMW basically organizes women-centric events, which could be technical symposia or experience sharing about returning to the workplace after a break. Also to encourage women students to be more active in coding. There are hackathons, coding competitions. So there are three major events. There's an All India celebration, which is held once a year. It was held in Dehradun last year. It's going to be held in Chennai this year. There are regional celebrations, which were held in a couple of places last year, 4 planned this year. And then every December, there is a big event, which is more at the moment industry focused, called the Grace Hopper Conference, which is held in partnership with the Anita Borg Institute. It's been held in Bangalore for the last few years, but it has outgrown the size of the venue, I think, in Bangalore, so it's going to be held in Hyderabad next year. And so these are all ways in which ACMW in India is also trying to engage with women in computing. So ACM is a kind of distributed organization. So the idea is that it self-organizes, much like Mukund cells. So there are these special interest groups, which are the driving force of the research part. So you would have heard of some of these. There are SIGGRAPH and SIG-CSE and SIG-ACT and so on. So these are the ones which actually organize all the big conferences you've heard of. So SIGs are the academic lifeblood of ACM. And in India, we have 3 kind of local SIGs at the moment in software engineering, in knowledge discovery, data mining, and computer science education. The other local organization that ACM fosters are chapters. These could be professional chapters, which are geographically located, like in cities, student chapters, which are campus bound, and ACMW chapters, which are focused on ACMW activities. And we organize an annual chapter meeting where these chapters can come and present what they're doing. We also have what's called an eminent speaker program. This is the Indian equivalent of what ACM calls a distinguished speaker program, but this is India specific. We have a panel of Indian speakers who are available to go and address different chapters across the country and kind of meet with students and again inspire them and do interesting things. So the other target, which is a little harder to crack, is industry and government. So we have been trying to do something along these fronts the last year or so. At VLDB, which was held in Delhi, there was a Digital India event where there was a hackathon focused on India-specific data. There's a lot of government data now available in different fields like education and agriculture and so on. So the challenge was to design interesting applications based on this, and we had a number of really excellent proposals, including one on using blockchain for voting. In Bangalore, about October, we had a NASSCOM has its largest product-oriented conference called the Product Conclave, and we held a session, a half-a-day session called the Deep Tech Summit, where we had presentations from academia and from startups. And we are using this, and NASSCOM is also partnering with us to use this as a vehicle to get some amount of research transferred from academia to industry. And at the moment, there is an initiative on under the Human Resource Development HRD Ministry to promote coding through what's called the Smart India Hackathon. They hope to involve about 15,000 students in projects which are actually proposed by ministries and government agencies. Right? So this could be logically called technology for the greater good, or whatever we're supposed to be celebrating here. So these are different ways in which we are trying to engage, and hopefully with this, ACM gains some visibility, ACM India gains some visibility, some credibility, and takes us forward in this dialogue about policy. So I'll conclude with a few words about what I find to be a really exciting new idea. So computational thinking, some of you may have heard the term. It's a bit, difficult to define, but essentially it says you want to teach kids more systematically to think algorithmically and think in a more computational way, which anyway they're doing. That's how they're learning mathematics. They're learning algorithms, how to compute square roots and long division and all that. And we would like to make computer science education, some of the graph kind of stuff that Mukund talked about, a part of everybody's toolkit, because I think it's becoming indispensable in today's world to be aware of algorithms, efficiency, and these kinds of things. And this can be done, we believe, without changing the structure of the curriculum, because fortunately many schools in India have an hour or so set aside for so-called ICT, where they currently teach a lot of facts, like the way biology is taught, and where we can transform this hopefully into teaching computing the way we think it should be taught. And maybe we will then take over, with Mukund said, the biology periods also, and we'll teach them even more computing. Right? So we have a pilot going on. So the focus currently is on class 1 to 8, simply because in the Indian system, beyond class 9, you get into board exam issues, and it's very much harder for a school to decide what it wants to teach, because it's tied to what the board exam curriculum is, and it's a tough nut to crack at the starting stage. But we want to get there, but we have to get there by first building up a grassroots movement. I'm in Chennai now. I know all about grassroots movements. Okay, I walked 6.5 kilometers home yesterday because of grassroots movement. So we are focusing on class 1 to 8. There is a pilot on in Pune, 15 schools, about 5,000 students are participating this year. We're hoping to spread it to about 60 schools in the next 2 years. So over 3 years, we hope to cover 60 schools and then take it to the next level. There is a website. We are looking for volunteers to create content for these lessons. Please do look at that website. It looks like this. And do join us. So with that, that's all I have to say about ACM India. And thank you for being here. And I hope we will have a wonderful remaining few sessions today and tomorrow. Yes.
Just like mathematics Olympiad, can you have some kind of CS kind of Olympiad for schools or even for...
Yeah, so there is actually at the same level as a mathematics Olympiad, there is something called the Informatics Olympiad internationally, which is a contest of algorithms and programming. And in fact, I have been in a different side coordinating that since the Indian participation began, which is around 2001. So we do reach out to students through that. Because of the level of expectation in that and the way things are taught in school, the number of students we reach out to, they are largely self-taught. So this is a way to bridge the gap, we hope. So this will be a more mainstream effort, trying to teach more basic programming, and hopefully it will drive a few students to excel in this direction, who are anyway there, but I think more students are not exposed and don't know about it. So we do find out a lot of people who have a very strong aptitude for mathematics who find out that they would have done this had they known that this was a mathematical activity, but it's been so badly taught in schools that people run away from computer science. Even if they know enough and if they're interested in it, they don't know that they are interested in it. So I think that's definitely one way to motivate, but that can only touch a very small elite fraction, so we need to get a bigger base. That's what we're...
Can I just add to that? So I think one more thing, I don't know whether you're aware, we also have this thing now in India called the Panini Linguistics Olympiad, which in fact a couple of folks from our lab are involved, and we've been now driving it for the last 2-3 years. Linguistics, as you know, is also about essentially, is about recognizing patterns, and we think that could be a very strong mechanism to inculcate, computational thinking kind of abilities in students, which is why our research has got interested in the
so
problem.
there is a fairly strong overlap between those taking part in the informatics and the linguistics Olympiad. But linguistics, again, because of its confusion in school with language and grammar and that direction, people don't realize it is a computational activity. So it's very hard to get the message across and get students to participate. Once they do, they find it really fascinating. But it's that initial awareness hurdle which is very hard to bridge.
IIT Hyderabad is involved in that.
Yes, of course. Yeah, we know that. Yeah. Any more questions for Madhavan and ACM India? Of course, he'll be here. He's also doing a short talk later in the evening as part of the evening dinner session, so we'll see more of him.